Everyone thinks they're late. Late to money, late to freedom, late to opportunity. Late compared to everyone else they're watching online. They scroll, they compare, they feel pressure in their chest and call it motivation, but that pressure isn't urgency, it's confusion. And today I want to dismantle the most damaging lie quietly running your life. That you missed your window. You didn't. You were never meant to move all at once. You were meant to be released in phases, and once you understand this, the panic disappears and control comes back. Let's start with something uncomfortable. If success was just about effort, if timing was random, if freedom was first come, first served, then most of the people winning right now would be the smartest, hardest working people alive. They're not. Some are average, some are reckless, some barely understand what they're doing. Yet they're ahead, not because they're better, because they entered the system at the right phase, not earlier, not later, and that's what nobody explains. And the world sells you a fake timeline. Graduate by this age, make money by this age, figure life out by this age. And when you don't match it, the story becomes, I'm behind. That story is poison because it turns a timing problem into an identity problem. You don't just feel late, you feel defective, like you missed a fundamental upgrade everyone else got. And once that belief sets in, everything you do becomes frantic. You rush decisions, you chase noise, you confuse movement with progress. That's not how real leverage is built. Here's the truth most people never hear. The system doesn't release everyone at the same time. It can't. If it did, the system would collapse. So it staggers people. Some get early access, some get delayed access, some get partial access for years before the door actually opens, not because of merit, because of structure. Think about this logically. If everyone woke up at 22 with full financial clarity, digital leverage, emotional regulation, and long-term thinking, who would run the system? Who would fill the jobs? Who would carry the debt? Who would absorb the risk? The system survives because most people are released late, gradually, or never. That doesn't make you unlucky. It means you're inside a controlled rollout. Most people don't fail, they're held in effort loops, held in consumption loops, held in identity loops that keep them productive but non-dangerous. And when someone starts to wake up too early, something interesting happens. They don't get freedom immediately, they get friction, confusion, doubt, false starts, years that feel wasted. Those years weren't wasted, they were buffer years. Years where you learned restraint, pattern recognition, emotional control, and systems thinking without the resources to destroy yourself with speed. That's phase one. Phase one feels like stagnation, but it's actually compression, pressure without release. And pressure does one of two things. It either breaks people or sharpens them. Most break, they numb out, they accept the script, they settle into comfort disguised as maturity. But some don't. Some start asking different questions. Not how do I try harder, but what game am I actually in? That's when phase two begins. Phase two is disorientation. You no longer fit the old system, but you're not free yet. You feel out of sync, you're not asleep, but not ahead either. This is where most people quit. They mistake transition for failure. They go back to what's familiar because uncertainty hurts more than stagnation. But if you're watching this, you didn't go back. You stayed in the discomfort. That tells me something about you. People who were truly late don't feel this tension. They feel resignation. They don't question timelines. They don't feel internal friction. They don't feel the pull toward leverage. They just comply. The fact that you're uncomfortable means the release mechanism already started. You're not late. You're early for your phase. Here's what nobody tells you about timing. Speed without sequencing destroys people. That's why most overnight success stories end badly. Money before identity causes collapse. Visibility before self-control creates chaos. Leverage before clarity amplifies weakness. So the system delays people who would self-destruct with early access. It withholds scale until you can hold it. That's not punishment. That's filtration. Look around. How many people you saw win early are now burnt out, lost, addicted, or stuck repeating the same peak year over and over? Early access doesn't mean permanent access. And late access doesn't mean no access. It means controlled entry. And the problem is nobody explains this, so you interpret delay as incompetence. You blame yourself. You say things like, I should be further. I wasted time. I'm running out of runway. That belief creates urgency, but the wrong kind. Panicked urgency leads to fragile moves. Fragile moves break under pressure. That's why most people self-sabotage right before their real window opens. Let me say this clearly. Your timing isn't wrong. Your interpretation is. You weren't late. You were being prepared invisibly. Every phase builds a specific trait. Phase 1 builds endurance. Phase 2 builds discernment. Phase 3 builds leverage. You can't skip phases. People who try usually end up rich but trapped, or free but broke. The goal isn't escape, it's control, and control requires sequencing. This is why the just work harder advice fails. Effort doesn't unlock timing. Alignment does. You don't force doors open. You recognize which doors are already unlocked. Right now you're in the phase where clarity starts to stabilize. You see patterns instead of tactics. You care more about systems than hacks. You're less emotional about money than before. That's not coincidence. That's phase shift. And phase shifts always feel quiet. No fireworks, no announcement, just subtle internal reorganization. That's how real transitions happen. The system doesn't reward noise. It rewards positioning. And positioning happens long before visible results. Here's the dangerous part. Once you realize you're not late, you might relax too much. Don't. This phase isn't passive, it's surgical. This is where you stop chasing and start building assets that compound quietly, not because you're desperate, but because the window is approaching. There's a difference between urgency and desperation. Desperation says, I need something now. Urgency says, I need to place the right pieces before the window fully opens. One burns energy, the other focuses it. This is why most people miss their real release. They mistake preparation for delay. They abandon the process right before leverage shows up. You won't, because now you understand the structure. The system releases people in phases because chaos must be managed. You don't unleash everyone with potential at once, you stagger them. That's why some people seem to suddenly break through in their 30s, 40s, even 50s. They weren't late, they were incubating. Your job isn't to compare timelines, it's to recognize signals. Here are the signals that your phase is shifting. You're less impressed by surface success. You're more focused on ownership than income. You're allergic to busy work. You value leverage over validation. You're willing to move quietly longer than most. Those aren't random traits, they're prerequisites. People who are truly behind don't think like this. They're still chasing approval, still optimizing for short-term wins, still mistaking visibility for power. You're not. That's why the old timeline doesn't apply to you anymore. Let's ground this. What does phase-appropriate action look like? It's not dramatic, it's boring on the surface. Building systems instead of chasing checks. Creating assets instead of flexing progress. Learning distribution instead of perfecting skill endlessly. This is where most people get impatient. Good. Impatience filters out noise. Understand this, the system doesn't block exits, it delays them. Delayed exits create discipline. Discipline creates durability. Durability holds leverage. Once your window opens, speed increases naturally. You won't need motivation. You won't need validation. You'll just move calmly and decisively. That's how you know it's real. If you're watching this and feeling something settle instead of spike, that's intentional. This video isn't here to hype you. It's here to stabilize you. Because unstable people make loud moves. Stable people make irreversible ones. Now here's the part most people avoid. When your phase shifts, responsibility increases. You don't get to pretend anymore. You don't get to hide behind, I'm still figuring it out. You know too much now, which means your actions must match your awareness. And this is where systems matter, not motivation, not discipline, systems. If you don't build systems during this phase, you'll waste it. And the system won't rush your next release. It will wait until you're ready again. And that's why I built the Money Logic playbook, not as hype, not as a shortcut, but as a framework for people who are already mid-transition, people who don't need motivation and they need structure. Structure turns clarity into leverage. If you're early phase, it'll confuse you. If you're asleep, it won't land. But if you're here right now, it'll feel obvious because it's designed for this phase. This isn't about getting rich. It's about exiting the effort-only loop permanently, understanding timing, understanding leverage, understanding why trying harder never worked and never will. You're not late. You're being released in phases. The only mistake now would be panicking and forcing speed. Move deliberately, build quietly, and when the window fully opens, you'll already be positioned. And that's how real exits happen, not loudly, not early, but inevitably.